The most dangerous thing about power is that history is full of nations, kingdoms, and empires that fell apart not because the strongest reigned, but because the weakest ascended to the top. The throne of influence is typically passed down to the irresponsible, shallow, and foolish, not the intelligent, just, or noble. Civilization learns this lesson the hard way again and over again. But you still believe the comforting lie that knowledge, merit, or moral character naturally dictate who should be in charge. But if that's true, why have men who led millions to destruction ruled the world for hundreds of years? Why do people in power put liars, opportunists, and manipulators in charge and silence reasonable people? If power were logical, history would be a long, steady path to justice. Instead, it's a cycle of smart people being drowned out by ignorant ones and visionaries being hushed by clowns. This is not an exaggeration. It is the chilling truth that Machiavelli, Nietzsche, and many other thinkers whispered to those who were brave enough to listen. It's not a problem that idiots mistakenly get power. The difficulty is that people as a group choose them. People give authority to people who are least able to use it properly, and they do it gladly, even happily, until the repercussions crush them under the weight of their own ignorance. Think about this. The attributes that make someone look strong, decisive, or even charismatic, like arrogance, recklessness, and shamelessness, are the same traits that make them look silly. The wise, on the other hand, often look weak or unsure because they are reluctant, careful, and keenly aware of how uncertain things are. You give rewards for confidence, not skill. You like people that are brave, not deep. And so the cycle goes on. The crowd cheers as the dumbest voice gets louder and louder until disaster strikes and everyone is quiet. Doesn't it make you feel uneasy? In your world, the way power works is against wisdom. The scales are fixed. You think that leaders get ahead because they know more, but the truth is that they go ahead because they are brave enough to take what others won't. They are not led by knowledge, but by hunger. They are not held back by humility. Instead, they are boosted by false beliefs. And the people think this blindness is sight. Why does the weak man in disguise seem strong to you? Why do falsehoods that seem confident work better than the truth that sounds shaky? Why do you think that loudness is authority, brutality is power, and ignorance is clarity? The answer hurts more than you want it to. You are also foolish, not just them. The collective psychology of humanity encourages the very traits that should be condemned. A leader who has no shame can't be embarrassed. A leader who doesn't have a conscience can't be stopped. And a leader who isn't wise can't be stopped by doubt. These are exactly the things that make up dictatorship, but you keep giving them to your so-called leaders like they're a feast. Niccolò Machiavelli was well aware of this. His writing wasn't only caustic comments about kings and princes. It was also scary analyses of how fragile people are. He realized that people were not governed by truth, but by appearances. They didn't want to be wise. They wanted to feel strong. So the one who wears the mask best has the most power, not the person who knows the most. This is why fools rise to power and wise people are sent away. They gave Socrates poison to shut him up. After Marcus Aurelius came Commodus. Visionaries are buried and fools take the crown. And all the time, people appear shocked, as if this terrible prank hadn't been happening over and over again since the beginning of time. The truth is hard to take. Power and stupidity are not enemies, but friends. They give each other food. And the more you learn about this reality, the more disturbing it gets. If fools keep getting into power, then intelligence is useless. What is the use of knowledge, philosophy, or truth if the masses consistently prioritize spectacle? The big question you need to think about is whether power and wisdom are ever really aligned, or if human society is set up to give power to the least capable. If the smart cannot reign because their wisdom makes them careful, does that mean that wisdom is a curse? You might wish to think differently, that the good will win in the end. But look at the rubble of history, the bodies of civilizations, and the never-ending cycle of the same tragedy. Do you still think that being smart means you can lead? Do you still believe that truth will win out over lies? Or do you have to finally accept what you've always feared? That people are made to serve the people who want to destroy them. You can't answer the question yet, and it hangs heavy, but the weight of it pushes you to look deeper. If Machiavelli was right, then power isn't a prize for knowledge. It's a stage where masks beat minds, and it means you live in a world where you need to know how to read people's minds to stay alive. And we need to find this hidden psychology, the dark machinery that is going on behind the scenes. This unsettling trend is based on something much more basic than politics, strategy, or luck. Not only do fools claw their way to power, but the way the human mind works makes it conceivable, even necessary. To get away from it, you have to first face the difficult truth that people are not mostly logical beings. They are psychic beings, governed by instincts, archetypes, and shadows they scarcely comprehend. When these inner forces are compounded by millions, they form a society that rewards the wrong leaders. Carl Jung once said that the unconscious mind controls people much more than the conscious mind lets on. When people come together in a group, they stop thinking critically and start acting on instinct. Jung characterized this collective psyche as primal, emotional, and susceptible to projection. People don't judge leaders based on facts. They put their fears, wants, and shadows on them. The fool who yells with confidence becomes the savior, not because he is, but because he mirrors the crowd's underlying desire. But Jung just touches the surface. Nietzsche, writing with fire and passion, found another cause, the anger of the people. He believes that people secretly hate those who are too smart or unique. They penalize people who show their vulnerability by comparing them to others. The typical person finds true wisdom, which is deep and complex, to be strange. But the fool speaks their language, simple, bold, and without any subtleties. Nietzsche saw that authority tends to gravitate towards the agreeable rather than the profound. The majority do not desire elevation, they need affirmation. And the fool confirms them by showing how limited they are. Niccolò Machiavelli, hundreds of years ago, offered the most scary prognosis of all. He didn't romanticize people in The Prince, he stripped them bare. He said that people are hungry, vain, fickle, and afraid. They look up to strength, but they turn on it as soon as they see weakness. They want other people to be moral, but they don't always do it themselves. To lead such beings, a leader must not be intelligent in the noble sense, but cunning in the cruel meaning. Machiavelli thought that the way to power was not via reason or virtue, but through making things look different. The fool, who has no conscience or problems, naturally shines in this theater. Think about it. Being wise makes you go more slowly. It makes you think, hesitate, and accept that you don't know everything. A truly wise leader knows that the world is complicated and can't promise complete assurance. But being stupid is quick. It comes in with confidence, fills stillness with noise, and hides ignorance with swagger. People are built to look for clarity in the middle of turmoil, so they are drawn to the one who sounds sure, even if he is completely incorrect. The confidence heuristic is the idea that people tend to think that being confident means being good at something. When things are bad and fear distorts judgment, the appearance of certainty is more convincing than the fact. The fool, drunk on his own lies, gives off the confidence that people want. The knowledgeable, who are conscious of their own pain, seem unsure. And thus, without even knowing it, communities keep giving power to the blind and taking it away from the clear-sighted. But underneath this bias is something more darker: our fixation with show. In your world, attention equals money, and the idiot is the best performance. He loves to make things bigger than they are, loves to be in the news, and loves to be seen. Wisdom speaks softly, but stupidity bellows. And if you put a fool who is yelling next to a sage who is whispering, which one will the mob hear? Which one will they choose to follow? This is why what Machiavelli said seemed so prophetic. He didn't suggest that rulers should be smart. He said they should look smart. He didn't say that morality gives people power. He said that the look of morality does. The mask, not the person, wins. The fool, who has no shame, wears this mask better than anyone else. And this is the psychological trap. You think you are picking a leader. You are really choosing a picture of yourself. You make the stupid rise by giving him something. He speaks the language of your anxieties. He shows how much you want to be sure, and he is the darkness you won't face. You give him power because you think your unconscious wants are true. The paradox is now sharper. If people are predisposed to lift up fools, then intelligence is not only not welcomed, it is actively despised. People may talk about how smart they are, but what they really want is spectacle, confidence, and strength, even if it's empty. This is why history seems like a sad story that keeps happening. But this isn't just history. It's psychology happening right now. This hidden machinery of the mind shapes every election, every institution, and every social structure. And if you don't face it, you'll have to play your part in the tragedy. The part of the loyal spectator who cheers on the fool who will kill you. The issue is not elsewhere, but within you, within the collective psyche, and within the profound patterns of human want and fear. That's why fools are in charge. That is why wisdom doesn't say anything. But what happens when an idiot gets a crown on their head? What hidden effects spread through society's body, damaging it from the inside out, long before the collapse is clear? We have to step into that shadow next. The crown on the fool's head doesn't just sit there. It turns into a weapon that spreads quietly across all levels of society. You might think that stupid leaders just hurt economies, waste resources, or run governments poorly. But the real damage goes much deeper, hidden under the surface, where it festers in the minds of everyone in the civilization. The effects you can't see are the most dangerous because by the time you do, it's too late. The first and most dangerous effect is that the truth itself starts to fade away. When fools are in charge, falsehoods and truth become the same thing. The dumb leader does not thrive on clarity. They thrive on confusion. He has control over you as long as you can't discern what's real and what's not. And so he fills the public space with noise, lies, exaggerations, and empty promises until your mind is so tired that it just takes whatever seems easiest. Cognitive overload is what cognitive psychologists term this. The more chaos you confront, the more inclined you are to believe simple but misleading stories. And who gives those? The idiot. But the poison doesn't only lie. Moral inversion is another result. When the foolish are in charge, what is wrong becomes right. People call being reckless brave, being unkind strong, and being ignorant real. You start to notice a weird change. The qualities that used to make someone great, wisdom, patience, and humility, are now seen as flaws. At the same time, traits that were earlier seen as bad, including arrogance, impulsiveness, and dishonesty, are now seen as signs of a good leader. This reversal destroys society's sense of right and wrong. People don't only put up with the fool, they start to copy him. And this is where the risk grows. Ignorance spreads down. People learn to be corrupt when their leader is corrupt. People learn to be dishonest when their leader is. Leadership is like copying someone else. What happens at the top is heard at the bottom. You could think that one stupid leader can't change a whole generation, yet history shows that they can. The deterioration moves slowly, changing culture and making things that used to be inconceivable seem acceptable. People who used to hate the fool start to act like him, think like him, and see the world like him. From this point on, things become worse. Neuroscience shows that people have mirror neurons, which are cells that make you automatically copy the actions and feelings of others. This means that folly doesn't only stay at the top when it shows up in positions of power. It spreads. It changes how brains work on a neurological level. Over time, whole societies change without realizing it to fit the attributes of their leaders. The idiot doesn't just tell you what to do, he changes how you think. But the loss of trust may be the worst thing that could happen. A good leader establishes trust by making sure that what they say and do are the same. But the idiot is unpredictable. His promises fall apart as soon as he makes them. He loves it when things don't make sense. And even if the crowds may praise him at first, trust can't last long in that kind of climate. Cynicism creeps in slowly. People cease trusting each other, leaders, and institutions. When trust breaks down, society falls apart. Can you see how bad this is? A foolish leader doesn't merely waste money, he also breaks the bonds that keep people together. Politics splits families, people in the neighborhood quit working together, communities break apart. And in this fertile ground of suspicion, opportunists grow. Corruption spreads quickly because no one believes in good anymore. The fool has made disorder commonplace, and chaos is now the law. This breakdown of trust has one last terrible effect. It kills hope. People cease wanting to be wise when they think that being stupid always wins. They cease hoping for leaders that are good, fair, or smart. They believe in cynicism. Kids watch the show and learn that honesty doesn't pay off, that lying gives you power, and that being stupid is applauded instead than punished. And what type of future can come from this kind of soil? This is when the cycle comes full circle. People make foolish leaders by giving them power. Their rule destroys society, which makes individuals dumber. And this new generation, which has lost hope and knowledge, makes even bigger fools. One careless leader leads to a never-ending cycle of decline that spirals down until collapse is unavoidable. This is why history keeps happening, not because people forget, but because people change. Every empire that was destroyed by dumb leaders was first hollowed out from the inside by deception, moral inversion, imitation, and the loss of confidence. People had already written about the collapse in their hearts and minds by the time it became clear. You might think to yourself, it won't happen here, not this time, not in my lifetime. But that's what every society has said before it crumbled. So now, the issue is unavoidable. If folly and power corrupts not just governments but whole cultures, is there any way to stop it? Or will you have to go through the same cycle over and over, praising the same idiots until your own world falls apart? There is an answer, but it requires the most extreme sort of revolt. Not insurrection with guns or bloodshed, but rebellion of the mind. And that rebellion starts with breaking free from the lies that put you in chains. If folly and power is not an accident but a cycle, one built into the very structure of human psyche and society, then breaking free takes nothing less than a revolution of perception. You can't just sit back and wait for better leaders. You can't expect wisdom to just come to you on its own. No, you have to fight against the lies that have kept you in this trap, lies that the fool uses to his advantage. And this rebellion starts in your mind, unlike any other. The first step in rebelling is to say no to the confidence trap. Keep in mind that individuals think that being sure of something is the same as being sure of the truth. But you have to see through this trick. The fool does well because he makes you think that clarity is the same as reality. He drowns you in strong assertions and unwavering belief, whereas the wise take their time, struggle with complicated issues, and occasionally stay quiet. You need to learn to value hesitation, respect complexity, and find strength not in being loud but in being deep in order to break free. Ask yourself, who do I trust more? The person who says they know everything or the person who says they don't know everything? You are still enslaved if you can't answer that truthfully. The second act of rebellion is to accept being uncomfortable. Fools get ahead because they promise quick fixes. They tell people that life may be simple, problems can be handled swiftly, and foes can be beaten effortlessly. But wisdom requires discomfort. It makes you confront the limits of your knowledge, as well as paradoxes and contradictions. It won't give you a tidy, reassuring story. And that's why people don't want it. But if you really want to rebel, you have to choose the harder way. You have to fight the drug of simplicity. You need to learn how to deal with questions that don't have clear answers. This is when wisdom starts to get sharper, in discomfort. The final act of rebellion is being mentally alert. Jung said that the idiot gets power because he is the shadow of the collective mind. He embodies the fears, rage, and desires that individuals are unable to confront within themselves. This means that the real fight is not with the idiot, but with the dark parts of yourself. You need to face your own desire for certainty, your own love of spectacle, and your own timidity that wants to run away from loud voices. You are still helping the fool rise until you face this shadow. Rebellion does not start with getting rid of a leader. It starts with getting rid of the parts of you that want him. But rebellion doesn't just happen in the head. It must take shape in action, even if it's small. In a foolish time, one of the most radical things you can do is be quiet. The fool loves attention, reaction, and show. Every cheer, every anger, every joke, and even every attempt to prove him wrong gives him more power. To take away attention is to shut off the gasoline line. To deprive the fool of spectacle is to initiate his downfall. In this way, silence becomes a form of protest. Growing little rings of truth is another way to rebel. You need to make hidden spaces where honesty can grow in a world where lies are everywhere. This might be your friends, family, or community. Small places where intelligence is not made fun of, but instead nurtured. History demonstrates that empires fall apart because of stupidity, yet new life always grows in secret places. Socrates didn't teach from a throne. He taught by talking to people. Marcus Aurelius did not write for the public. He wrote for himself. Real power doesn't come from the multitude. It comes from the few who won't let themselves be corrupted. Rebellion can also happen when people change what it means to be strong. People like the idiot because he seems strong, loud, forceful, and unyielding. But this is not real strength. Being able to control yourself is true strength. The ability to control one's own impulses and not let emotions run one's life is true strength. The Stoics were aware of this. Epictetus remarked, "A man is not free unless he is in charge of himself." To fight against the age of fools, you need to have this kind of strength. You need to become dangerous not by making noise, but by being disciplined. When enough people show actual strength, the fool's appeal fades. But revolt also requires something that doesn't seem right: patience. Fools climb swiftly because they have a lot of energy and it burns fast. But they also fall apart swiftly because of their own carelessness. In contrast, wisdom moves slowly and silently, lasting for hundreds of years. Your rebellion isn't about winning right away. It's about planting seeds that may not grow in your lifetime. It is about establishing an inner citadel, a stronghold of the mind that stays safe from the craziness outside. From this fortress, you can fight off the spread of stupidity and maybe even outlive it. This is not an easy road. It's far easier to praise the fool, give in to the show, and live in a state of numbness because of easy solutions. But revolt needs more. You have to look in the mirror and ask yourself, am I feeding the very cycle I hate? It tells you to not devote your time, energy, or admiration to people who want to make you a slave. It requires you to choose wisdom, even when it feels lonely. But here's the strange thing. This form of revolt gives you power that the fool can't touch. When you stop thinking that confidence is the same as truth, the idiot can't trick you. The fool can't seduce you if you don't want easy solutions anymore. The idiot cannot inhabit your shadows if you don't project them anymore. The fool dies when you don't pay attention to them. And when you build your inner fortress, no one can touch you, no matter who is in charge. So, certainly, the cycle of stupidity has been around for a long time. Yes, it has brought down empires and will do it again. But there is always a chance of rebellion. And if you accept it, you become part of a different story. The story of those who survive, who keep wisdom alive, and who keep the flame burning even in the darkest times. But even while you fight back, there's one last question. What is the real reality underlying this cycle? Why does it seem like knowledge is always going to lose and stupidity is always going to win? Is the human state eternally doomed? Or is there a profound understanding yet to be revealed, an insight capable of dismantling the cycle itself? We must now face that final truth. The rebellion of the mind is essential, although it remains an unresolved inquiry. Why must mankind contend with this cycle? Why does wisdom so often give in to ignorance, as if the world itself is trying to help those who don't deserve it? What does the fact that history is full of fallen empires, each led by leaders who were too proud and blind to see what was going on, say about the nature of power? The response is not good news. There is no hope or quick way out. The fundamental fact is that power is, by its very nature, illogical. It doesn't lead to wisdom. It goes toward hunger. And the fool who doesn't think about things is the hungriest of all. You want to think that being a leader means helping others reach a better level. But power isn't about getting higher. It's about having something. It doesn't go to the one who deserves it. It goes to the person who is willing to pay for it. The wise are hesitant to pay because they know what it will cost. Corrupting the soul, betraying the conscience, and compromising the truth. The fool, who doesn't see these expenses, takes the crown without thinking. And this is where his blindness helps him. This is where the dichotomy becomes clear. Wisdom holds back, yet recklessness wins against restraint. The traits that make someone knowledgeable, like being humble, patient, and aware of their limits, are the same traits that keep them from winning in the harsh world of power. Power doesn't respect wisdom. It is made to reward people who are not ashamed. Machiavelli was the best at understanding this. His words weren't meant to tell the noble what to do. They were meant to help the smart survive. He understood that power eludes those who adhere to ideas. He didn't write for smart people. He wrote for people who were willing to lie, cheat, and betray. The fool is already Machiavellian in his most basic form. He doesn't pause, question, or dig inside himself. He lunges forward, and the crown falls into his hands. But here is the deeper truth. Wisdom does not always rule. When wisdom does prevail, it's an odd thing, a delicate marvel, a brief alignment of stars. Marcus Aurelius was on the throne for a short time before it fell apart. There aren't many great philosopher kings in history, which is why their names are still known after thousands of years. You remember them because they stand out in the dark. What does this mean for you? This means that you should cease thinking that the world would reward you for being wise. You need to stop thinking that truth will always win or that justice will always win. This false idea is what makes you weak. The harsh truth is that wisdom lives on not because it gains power, but because it goes beyond power. If authority is always open to corruption and always leads to stupidity, then maybe the best thing to do is not to try to get power at all. The most profound kind of rebellion may be to cultivate strength independent of the throne. The Stoics were aware of this. Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca all lived in corrupt institutions with stupid people and tyrants all around them. But their wisdom lived on. What? Because they made a realm inside themselves that no one could touch. They knew that strength from outside is weak, but power from inside, being able to control your mind and your reactions, is strong. The cycle of foolish rulers may never end, but you don't have to be dominated by it. You can get out of it. You can be the master of your own life, and that power is greater than any throne. The idiot may be able to tell armies what to do, but he can't tell you what to think. A fool can ruin countries, but he can't ruin your soul until you give it to him. And once you realize this clearly, no one can affect you. This knowledge is not supposed to make you feel better. It is designed to wake you up. Don't wait for the world to make intelligent people kings. Stop hoping that justice will come from above. No, it won't. People who wear the crown are generally always fools because it is cursed. You shouldn't worship or give up. Instead, you should become so disciplined and in charge of yourself that nothing outside of you can bring you down. Do you see the change? The question is no longer, why do fools rule? That question keeps you angry. The true question is, how do I stay free in a world full of idiots? That is the question that turns hopelessness into strength. And so the cycle goes on. Fools will rise, societies will break down, and empires will collapse. But there is another line that runs through this endless rhythm. The line of people who see clearly, who refuse to submit to delusion, who keep wisdom alive in themselves and pass it on like a secret flame through the years. These people are not in charge of countries. They are in charge of themselves. This may be the most unsettling conclusion of all. Knowledge was never designed to sit on a throne. It was designed to last longer than the throne. It was supposed to persist longer than the show of power and to tell the truth long after civilizations have fallen. The foolish will come and go, but the inner citadel will always be there, unbroken. So now you need to ask yourself, who is in charge of me? But who is in charge of me? Because if the answer isn't you, the fool has already won, no matter who wears the crown.